ISSA's media brands are the voice of the cleaning industry, from our websites to our daily news feeds. From ISSA TV, the ISSA YouTube channel, interview programs such as Straight Talk, and our flagship print and digital publications. ISSA's media brands keep you informed on the most relevant content impacting your business or organization. Access our resources at issa.com/media.
Today, I'd like to welcome Randy Burke, the founder and CEO of DCS Global, an international custodial advisory company. This interview today is part of a series that we are producing as we look at strategies to add value through the chain of cleaning services and ways to benefit suppliers, contractors, and facility managers. Randy, welcome. How are you today?
Yeah, Jeff, real well. Thanks very much. I've been excited about this session for quite a while. It's a big deal for us.
Agreed. So today we're talking about driving value through an effective cleaning RFP process. So let's start with this. How long have you been supporting facility managers with RFPs?
Wow, over 25 years. It was actually the first project I did, moving from a contractor to a consultant. We had a major property management company said to us literally, "We can't get what we can through our normal RFP process. Would you help us?" And yeah, so that's where it started. But yeah, it's a main line of our business. We've been doing it, like I say, over 25 years. Founded the company there, then of course went into audits and all the other things that are there. So what's really interesting for me is the feedback we get, not just from our clients, because we're subject matter experts, and so the support's there, and we can talk a little bit more about that later, but from contractors. If you get a fuzzy RFP as a contractor, it's not clear, and it has not what you need to put an accurate bid together. In addition, you as an incumbent contractor see things that should be in there that aren't. It invites all sorts of issues with confusion, low bids. So I think that's really why we're so busy at this. I mean, right now we're doing, I just counted it up, 90 different buildings right now. So I think that's why, as subject matter experts, both sides of the party, both sides really do benefit.
Okay. Thinking about driving value, some might say that's a fairly broad and ambitious term. Let's talk about that. How would you describe that?
It's kind of three things for me driving value. You're doing the right things, which is effectiveness. Getting efficient is important so that, you're not wasting time doing the right things again. And then value, it's got to be at the right price. So when you combine all those things, our job is to get a really accurate RFP process that we project manage that saves time and is really better, faster, and cheaper than doing it yourself. Even if, property facility managers look at the cost of their own time. So that's our job. And then at the same time, we've got to be really careful to bring in, the latest and greatest of what's on the market, certainly post-pandemic items, dealing with low occupancy, all those kind of nuances, which, as time moves on, what's involved in cleaning changes. So when you look at all of that and you bring in, specifications, you bring in operating conditions, timelines, all how to handle HR, human staffing, unions, it goes on and on and on. That's a lot of information to get right. And so I think if we do that properly, we are doing things right, it's efficient, and we just charge by time. So we're not worried about pricing so much. but it's got to provide the value.
So, Randy, without trivializing it, thinking about an RFP, isn't it just an RFP, request for a proposal, something a facility manager or the supply chain team can handle, like maintenance and security issues? Add to that.
Yeah, when you look at, a cleaning RFP, and by the way, I'll talk a little later about a new service we've got on the other items. But when you talk about a cleaning RFP, sure, you could take the old RFP and, change the date and try and dress it up and such. But as I mentioned before, there's so much that continues to change that, it really deserves a proper subject matter expert overview, building by building. Every building's different. I like to say they're all little communities. We do a lot of portfolio RFPs, and sure, you've got branding to look at, overall requirements from head office. So they've got to fit a certain standard and things like that. But the reality is when you look at day staff, is it day cleaned or night cleaned? What is the occupancy trends? All those things that I was speaking of, that's a complex document. So, for somebody to actually try and go through it themselves, that's pretty challenging. The building is the brand. If it isn't looking good and if it isn't, meeting the needs of the tenants, your brand suffers. So, and then there's the time. I've had clients come to me halfway through an RFP and just, I just can't get this done. It's just eating up my time. We've done this so many times that we've got our models. I like to say we take our tools and we bring our clients to approval points. So yeah, here's the timeline, looking good. Here's the specifications, looking good. Here's what we're going to do regarding post-pandemic requirements for auditing and such. All of those things. So we bring them to approval points. Out goes the document. Comes back. We answer any questions for the contractors. And then from there, it's doing our report, which we call a risk assessment. We uncover the data, the strengths and the weaknesses of the bids, report to the property management, facility management, and then the questions are answered. The client always does the award. We do not. We do answer questions, but it's not our contract. So that's overall kind of the overview of how we project manage. And yeah, and the value is definitely around the items that I mentioned. So yeah.
Okay. So Randy, it all comes down to the money, I would think. Isn't hiring a number of outsiders going to add significantly to costs?
Right.
What can you say to that?
Yeah, it's interesting because we're not outsiders. We may not work for our clients, but we're actually insiders in the industry. And I think that's the big difference. As subject matter experts, we see it all. I like to say we see everybody's stuff, so, having going through so many RFPs all the time, you see, you go through the needs assessments with the buildings. Oh, wow, there's some changes in how this union and this, collective bargaining agreement deals with, their labor force. We'll see in another area how what the wage rates are, what fits. So all this collective information as subject matter experts, like I say, brings efficiency, it brings accuracy, and in fact, you end up with a cleaning contract that's going to work. We like to say we create marriages, because if your contract doesn't work, boy, oh boy, there's a long and painful process to try and fix it. And then often it's just usually either the property management, the tenants, or somebody gets totally fed up, and then you're back into redoing the whole thing. So cost is quite a, what I would call, subjective viewpoint. Yeah, there's a dollar value attached to it, but when you look at the two things, what's value versus cost, we've been doing this for 25 years because we know that the value elements that I've been speaking of really are there. And for the contractors too. I mentioned earlier that it's a problem for incumbent contractors when a document comes out that that isn't right. But even beyond that, we end up doing often almost 80% of our RFPs follow with what we call the contract commissioning. And essentially, what we see in the industry, and hey, I used to do this as a contractor. Yay, I got a contract, and my job is now as owner or vice president to go sell another one. So you toss the specs and whatever to the supervisor or the area manager and say, here, make it happen. But there's so many variables that come into a new contract, even if it's the incumbent contractor. So our job now is to follow that through with who's ever on the ground doing it and saying, okay, this is what you bid. This is how we think it might work. What do you think? And we act as often a broker. It is marriage. And when you look at the intangibles of cleaning, and there are many, and you look at when all of a sudden, again, you've got a new contract, but you've also got an existing service level that tenants are receiving, and there's a lot of unknowns. So this whole, transition is a really important piece, and we feel strongly that that's something that really does add value also, so that you get a good start, and there's not a lot of transition bumps in the road.
Very good. So, Randy, if you're happy with your existing current cleaning quality, wouldn't it be just easier to reissue the same RFP for new pricing and test the marketplace?
Yeah, yes and no. I kind of covered that before, but what we see now is that, janitorial bids are competitive. So what you're going to get is, if you don't really have the latest needs listed out, and you aren't clear about who you're inviting, and you haven't vetted the bidders, and you haven't done all the background work or really have the market knowledge, what you're going to get is you're going to get generally two things. Contractors are either saying, you know what, I don't have enough information. I'm going to bid this thing really high because I want to be safe. The second thing you're going to get is somebody who's got a sales target to meet, and they say, you know what, there's enough loopholes in this spec, I can drive a truck through it. I'm going to low bid it. And that's even a worse problem, because sure, everyone wants to, have a price or a cleaning cost that is as best you can and get on the market. But, looking at the bids that are there that come in, if it isn't spec properly, or if you don't really have your homework done ahead of time and really do a risk evaluation of the bids that come in, what are the wage rates, what are the hours, what is the equipment, all those things, you could easily fall into this low bid award trap, and that's not a place anybody really wants to be.
Okay. So what we're talking about today, is it just for the benefit of facility managers, or do contractors benefit from this as well?
Yeah, I kind of touched on that. There's an element here which we do contract renegotiations. We call them current contract analysis. So often, a contract is going well, and 3 years are up, and property managers, facility managers, oh, we better test the market. Or something else happens, the labor market changes, and wow, I've really got to raise my wages, so my cost is going to go up, Mr. Client, all of those things. But the basic relationship is there, and the client knows that really there's some outside forces that are causing the need to go to bid. So we recommend a renegotiation, which we can do, a third-party renegotiation. We call it a current contract analysis, like I said. So we'll come in almost like a bidder, and we'll do a needs assessment. We'll talk to the client, we'll talk to the contractor, and we get really both sides of the picture. Then we put together, as if we were a bidder, a new spec, a proposed cost, some operating system changes, whatever tools are needed to re-sign the contract, bring the parties together and say, are we on target? And there's that final negotiation, and then they can re-sign a contract with third-party oversight, great governance, so that it doesn't really need to go to RFP from time to time. So we do a fair amount of those, and there's good value there and less destabilizing of relationships and staffing and all the things that, and you can save money. Sometimes equipment stays in place. Again, existing staff sometimes stay for not the latest 25 cents an hour or more. So there's a lot of advantages to that. And of course, the contractor stays. That's an advantage to them.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Randy, let's wrap up with this thought. A new service that you're offering that might interest chemical and equipment manufacturers and distributors. What's that?
Yeah, it's generally a consumables RFP. So there's a lot of destabilization in the supply chain. So we've just finished actually a very large consumable RFP. I think it was about 80 buildings. Toilet tissue, hand towels, hand soap, hand sanitizer, whatever they're buying on those consumable side, that can be put together into an RFP and brought forward to suppliers and distributors. And a lot of advantages there. You get some standardization across your portfolio. We are finding there are price savings, cost savings, pardon me, in the neighborhood right now, about 12% of overall costs. It's like anything else, bulk buying, in negotiation fairly. And often what's happening, building by building, they waste time. These services, the large supply companies, they provide inventory management. They've got software and sensing, washroom sensing for traffic. So there's a lot of value in bringing the biggest and the best, and sometimes not the biggest, but the best, into the consumables arena and putting that together and doing an RFP. We're looking at doing some along equipment, but right now it's just consumables. And we're finding that there's good value in that. So I think everybody wins. You get some good intelligence from the bidders. Clients obviously win for the reasons I stated. So yeah, it's a big subject. There's a lot here, Jeff. So I'm glad we had some chances to talk about it.
Absolutely. So we covered a lot today and look forward to the next recording in the future. Thanks, Randy.
Me too, Jeff. Thanks so much.